Hey, it's always good to have a plan of attack. I mean, whether you're talking a war strategy or a football game, or depending on the age of your kids, just running into the grocery store, right? I mean, sometimes you got to quarterback that thing before you go in, you know what I'm saying? It's good to have a plan. Now, I like to plan our vacations, not necessarily what we pack. I'm terrible at that. But planning out, like researching where we're going to go and what we're going to do, right? Where we're going to eat, where we're going to explore. I love reading countless Google reviews and Yelp reviews to make sure that we know what places to avoid as well. How many of you like planning out your vacations? Do a lot of that detailed research. Anybody? Yeah? Planners? Okay, pointing out your spouse. Yeah, this one over here loves that planning. Some of you are like, really, I don't care. We can just grab a brochure right in the lobby and we'll figure it out when we get there. I always usually take a few of those as well, just in case I miss something in my planning research. Well, the last time that we left off in Matthew chapter 10, we'll be there this morning if you'd like to turn your Bibles. Matthew chapter 10, Jesus was deputizing the 12 disciples to be his apostles. They would be given by Jesus' authority to heal the sick, to cast out demons, even to raise the dead. Now that sounds like a really good time, right? I mean, here in chapter 10, he's giving them a look into his plan, not only for sending them out on this short-term mission to the house of Israel, but also a look into his future plan when he sends them out to make disciples of all the world. So this week, we're going to be in Matthew 10, 16 through 25, where Jesus now says something very alarming to his disciples. He says, I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Well, this no longer sounds like fun. Jesus says, actually, the attacks that they will experience for following him will come from all over, from high places of authority to low, from outside their homes, and yes, even from within. This will be no vacation. This will be a dangerous mission. Matthew 10, 16 through 25, Jesus says, Behold, I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of men, for they will deliver you over to courts and flog you in their synagogues. And you will be dragged before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them and the Gentiles. Now when they deliver you over, do not be anxious how you are to speak or what you are to say, for what you are to say will be given to you in that hour. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Brother will deliver brother over to death, and the father his child, and the children will rise against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. Now when they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly I say to you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. Now a disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher and the servant like his master. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Thanks be to God, because this morning and in the weeks to come, we are going to learn how to faithfully and confidently walk with Jesus through persecution, even of various kinds, as we carry out his mission and his plan for us at Veritas Church. Now, I believe that chapter 10 really is a mission briefing. I think that's what's going on here. There is a mission that he is declaring to his people, his disciples. He's saying, we're going on this mission, and here are your orders. Here is what you are called to do, and here you need to beware even of the enemies and the attacks that are going to come. You even need to have a little counterintelligence, if you will. You need to be as wise as a serpent, but innocent as a dove. Right? And this attack is not just going to come from the outside, it's even going to come from within. But you need to be like me. If you're so to be my disciples, you need to be like the teacher. If you're going to so be like my servant, then you need to be like your master. And I will show you the way. And indeed, Jesus does just that. But again, this is like a mission briefing. When you get actually after chapter 10 into chapter 11, right? 11 verse 1. It says, when Jesus had finished instructing his 12 disciples, that he went on from there to teach and preach in their cities. Now that word, though, instructing, I was like, I wonder if that says anything about like mission or something like that, because this just seems so much to me, like a commanding officer, like talking with his team and giving them instructions. Sure enough, yeah. The NASB, the ESV, as well as the NIV all say giving instructions. The King James Version, if anyone has that, or New King James Version, goes a little bit further and says, no, it's maybe more like commanding. That is, after Jesus had finished commanding his 12 disciples. And then, of course, the Holman Christian Standard Bible, the HCSB, as well as the Lexham English Bible, they say giving orders. Giving orders. Now, why would giving orders, in my mind, be the most preferred word to translate here? The word is diatasso in the Greek. And indeed, if you look it up in the New Testament, where is this word used? It's primarily used of a master giving commands to a servant. Or, in the book of Acts, it is given to soldiers or the centurion who have Paul under Roman custody. When they are given diatasso, they are given their orders, right? Or their commands. And so you often will see it either translated as instructions, commands, or orders. So if used in this militaristic sense, or even if just a master-servant relationship, it's important for us to note here in Matthew chapter 10 that Jesus is not here just giving lessons to be pondered. He is giving orders to be obeyed. And the mission will not be easy. Sounds like fun at first, right? I mean, healing people, casting out demons, sign me up, right? Like that sounds like a good time. Raising the dead, okay, that sounds a little bit weird, but I'm still in, right? Sounds like a good time. Man, we get to be like Jesus, who's done all these things. Yes, they will have to be like Jesus. That's what he says, Matthew 10, 24 and 25, kind of working our way backwards here. When he says a disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. Don't expect better treatment than what your master got. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher and the servant like his master. Now, if they have called the master of the house Beelzebul, how much more will they malign those of his household? How many people know what that word means, Beelzebul? Well, okay, so Beelzebul, this is interesting. It is used as a slang term of insult against Satan. Okay, so if you're thinking, I think it's Satan or something, right? Yeah, it's another name for Satan, but it's more of like a slang and even like a derogatory type word, an insult against him. Why is that? Well, in the Old Testament Hebrew, Baal-zebub, like Beelzebub, right? That's without the L. Beelzebub means Lord of the Flies. Now, this is the title that they give the Philistine god. Again, it's an insult. It's a term of insult. Beelzebub. You are the Lord or your God over the flies. Now, some of you have a farm. Where do the flies like to hover around? Yeah, exactly. The poop. Right? Animal poop. Or dung. Okay, it's a more technical term. Yeah, that's right. Like around the cow patties or like goat droppings, all right? The flies hover around the poop. So they went one more further. And instead of saying Beelzebub, which is Lord over the flies or God of the flies, they say Beelzebul, which is Lord of dung. You are God over the poo. Okay? So Beelzebul, Lord of dung. That's what you're the God of. Not God of thunder, God of war, or God of love. You're the God of dung. So they end up applying this term to Satan himself as an insult. show how low he is compared to our high God. But then again, what greater way to insult Jesus but to call him the same nickname as Satan? And to call Jesus, they were calling Jesus Beelzebul, Lord of dung. So what does Jesus say to his disciples? He says, look, if they call me Beelzebul, Lord of dung, and you all call me Lord, what does that make you? Right? That's what they're going to treat you as. Now, how do you suppose one of these sermons would go over in churches today? How many people want to sign up to be Jesus' disciples? No one would sign up to be Jesus' disciple. People are far too worried about their image and what other people think. But Jesus wants his disciples eyes wide open to the threats, to the persecutions, to the malignment that is ahead of them. What people are going to say, how they're going to treat them, everything. He wants them to know that for them to stand up for him and for his name's sake, to know what's ahead. They've been given their orders of what they are to do. Now here is what to expect from the enemy all around them. Matthew 10:16, he says this, behold, here's how you can view it. I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. He says he's going to send them out in the midst of wolves, indicating the wolves are already there. The wolves are already all around them. I'm sending you out, and as I do that, you're in the midst of wolves. But indeed, Jesus does say that this is not negligence on his part. This is his plan. It's intentional. It has a purpose. It's not, hey, I'm about to go get a drink. Be careful, there's some wolves around here. But, no, he said, I know that there are wolves all around. And yes, I am sending you out, even though you are sheep, in the midst of these wolves. This is the shepherd's plan. This is the shepherd's design. So then he says to them, be wise. Be wise as serpents. This should cause us to even come up to Genesis chapter 3, where it says that the serpent was more cunning than all the rest of the beasts of the field, right? That he was more cunning. So be like a serpent, which is more cunning than a wolf. So you mean to tell me Jesus said, I'm sending you out in the midst of wolves and I'm supposed to be like Satan? Well, in one way, yes, but in another way, no. Yes, in the fact that you're right, and the serpent was more cunning, more wise, more crafty, more strategic than any other. But is it a sin to be wise, strategic, and cunning? Is it a sin? No. You can use your wisdom and your cunning and your strategy for good or for evil. Satan uses it for evil. What is he calling his sheep to do, his disciples to do? Use it for good. That's why you must both be as wise as a serpent, but also as innocent as doves. Innocent or have the integrity of, right? You must not only say, well, all the means are justified by the end, that end justifies the means. No, you must be righteous. You must be good. And the good and righteous things that you do must be for a good and righteous end and purpose. You must have the integrity of goodness. You cannot walk in the darkness. No, you must walk in the light. You must do what is right and what is good. And you must know and learn what is righteous and what is good by the word of God. And then as you go out, be cunning, be wise, be strategic. Don't be a fool. Matthew 10:17 through 20, he gets a little bit more clear about what he's talking about. He says, beware of men, for they will deliver you over to courts, and they will flog you in their synagogues. In their synagogues, this would be Jewish men, right? Jewish men of their own, even potential tribe, neighborhood. The disciples here are Jews themselves. And you will be dragged before governors and kings for my sake. Governors and kings, this would be Roman authorities, Roman governors, Roman kings, for my sake, to bear witness before them, the Jews and the Gentiles. Now when they deliver you over, matter of fact, did this ever happen to Jesus? Was Jesus ever flogged? Was Jesus ever persecuted? Was Jesus ever dragged before Roman governors? He says, but when they deliver you over, do not be anxious how you are to speak or what you are to say, for what you are to say will be given to you in that hour. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father will be speaking through you. This is my plan. This is his intention. Yes, we are going to bring the fight right to their doorstep. And yes, you're going to be dragged away. Yes, you're going to be imprisoned. And yes, then you're going to appear before the authorities and the magistrates. And when you do, can you imagine that even? Going from your jail cell, shackled, ready to appear before a court. And you're going to have to give a defense for why you are in there in the first place, or why, whatever you say, this could be the end of your life, not just, and that's a big deal, especially if you have your wife and your children, right? This is a big deal. Can you imagine this yourself? Going before a governor, and you got to think to yourself, okay, Jesus said, be wise as a serpent, be strategic, think through this, plan through this, be wise in what I say or what I don't say, really thinking through exactly what I'm going to say and choosing my words very carefully so that I could even be acquitted, but yet at the same time, I am not just here to be acquitted, I am here to what? Bear witness to Jesus. And so I must remain good, I must remain righteous, I must remain true in everything that I speak. Gosh, the same thing happens all throughout the book of Acts. This happens to them. In the book of Acts, when they are flogged, right, whether it's in the synagogues or whether they're dragged like Paul before Roman authorities, Jesus says, beware of men, but bear witness before them, and do not fear, for your Father will give you the words to speak. Man, attacks will come from every direction, sheep in the midst of, surrounded by wolves. Not only in the places of worship like synagogues, not only in public places before governors and kings, but even from their own household. Matthew 10, 21 through 22, brother will deliver over brother to death. To death. And father his child, and children will rise up against parents and have them put to death, and you will be hated by all for my name's sake. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. Again, it's important. We can take this passage and apply it to our day, which probably even as I'm preaching, you're already doing and thinking about just how that potentially could happen even in our culture, or in some ways is already happening. But before we apply it even to ourselves, we first need to look and see specifically, does this all happen to those apostles and to the disciples? Does it happen in early church history, right? You'll never hear this in Joel Osteen's church, okay? Right? About persecution and death for disciples. No, Jesus wants your best life now, right? No. They are giving their lives in their following Christ. This is all actually happens to them. Every one of them martyred for the faith. Some of them in excruciating ways. The early church was so persecuted. Matter of fact, have you heard of the lapsy controversy in the early church? This is the fact that Christians had lapsed in their faith when the persecution arose. So just let's think about the Roman Empire for a bit. First, it was the Jews that were really heavily persecuting the Christians because they weren't being the right kind of Jews, right? They're talking about Jesus being the final sacrifice, and we don't need the sacrificial system. Talking about Jesus as the greater temple of God, and that we don't need the temple to worship, but we can worship anywhere, right? The Jews were very angry at and even stoned Stephen when Stephen was saying what he was saying, even though the Jews are not allowed to do corporal punishment, right? That's why they had to bring Jesus before a Roman governor in order to get him crucified, because the Jews were under Roman authority. Okay? So first, though, it was some local, more Jewish persecution, even throughout the book of Acts. But then it gets a lot worse after the book of Acts in the early church. Then the Romans even start getting in on persecuting Christians after having destroyed basically all Jews in 70 AD. Not all of them, but that's what happens in 70 AD. But then after that, man, the persecution on Christians goes through the roof. You all know about the Roman Colosseum? Right? Roman Colosseum, where you come for entertainment. Gladiator, you ever seen Gladiator? Roman Colosseum. Well, they used to send Christians in to fight gladiators. Christians that didn't know how to fight for the entertainment of the people. Matter of fact, they would send them in these Colosseums to be torn to pieces for entertainment by lions and wild boars. Matter of fact, it got so bad. Remember when Nero was was the head of the Roman Empire. Remember what Nero would do with Christians? He would stick them and impale them on sticks and put them in his garden, pour oil on them and light them on fire to be torches for his garden party. That is what happened to Christians in the early church. It got so bad, but then you know what ends up happening? This guy named Constantine fights this battle, but the night before he actually sees this vision, the Chi, C-H, and the Rho, R, C-H-R. It's the two Greek letters for Christ. It's incredible, right? He sees that this predates the cross as the symbol for Christianity. He sees this symbol, the Chi Rho, and he says to himself, the Christian God, Jesus Christ, is going to give me victory in this war. And indeed, he gets victory. And when he gets this victory, he becomes now the head of the Roman Empire. And you know what? Christians go from being burned at the stake and fed to the lions to Christianity now becoming the official religion of all of the Roman Empire. And everyone must bow the knee to Christ. Whoa! But that's the Lapsy controversy. There were Christians that when the persecution got so high, they stopped following Jesus. They started denying Jesus. Deny Jesus or we're going to throw you to the lions. Yeah, denied, definitely denied, right? And they denied him. They ran, they hid. Right? They did not endure persecution, and yet these other Christians did. So imagine this controversy that happens as now it's the official religion, and Christians start coming out of hiding and want to come back to church. They're coming back to a church. They're coming back to a spouse whose spouse they saw get murdered by a gladiator in the Colosseum. They're coming back to parents. Or they're coming back to children who saw their parents get torn to pieces by lions for their faith. Or they're coming back to parents whose children were used as torches at a garden party. You see what I mean? How in the world is this church going to receive back these Christians who had denied Christ? Well, the same way that Jesus receives back Peter, only by the grace of God. But nonetheless, if they were not faithful to the end, if they were not faithful, there would be no church to come back to. So indeed, likewise, it is our mission, not that I believe it's going to get that bad here in America, but come what may. It is our mission, and He is our Lord, and so we are to be faithful to Jesus our Lord, to carry out His mission for His name, for His glory, and also for our children, and for our children's children, and even their children for years to come, to remain faithful to the end, for there to be a good church for them to come back to. I believe Jesus Christ will be victorious in every generation. Doesn't mean things won't get bad at any given time, but I do believe that Jesus in every generation will be victorious, for as He sends us out as sheep among wolves, He still is the great shepherd who watches over His sheep, who has a plan, and His gospel and His church will always prevail. You are proof of that even here today. Whether in life or in death. As the early church did 2,000 years ago, so shall the church, I believe, today until the Good Shepherd returns. Now there's an allusion to the coming of the Son of Man here in verse 23. I guess we have enough time. Okay, so Matthew 10:23. Maybe we don't. Just make sure to go down the fellowship hall afterwards so we don't get in trouble, okay? Matthew 10:23. There's another church that comes in at 11, in case you didn't know. All right, Matthew 10:23. When they persecute you in one town, he says, again, this is to these apostles, when they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly I say to you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. Okay, Son of Man, right, from Daniel 7. So there's this, he says the Son of Man is going to come, but not before they get through all the towns of Israel during this persecution. Jesus, what you talking about, right? Like, what you talking about, Jesus, right? Like Willis? No? Okay. What are you talking about here? That you're going to come back during this persecution while these apostles are fleeing from one town to the next, and it's going to happen not even before they can get through all the towns of Israel? This doesn't fit into my eschatological timeline. What are you talking about, Jesus? Okay. What do you all think? We'll hear afterwards. I'll tell you what I think. Does this refer to his first coming? No, he's already there, okay? So he's already come. And they haven't even left to go to the first town yet, so he's not talking about his first coming. Does this refer to him like coming by the end of the week? Like, okay, I'm about to send you out. Some persecution's going to happen. Go ahead and jump around from town to town. But don't worry, before it gets too bad, the Son of Man is going to come like on Friday and make sure that it stops. Is that what he means? I don't think so, because really there's no place in the Gospels where the disciples are getting persecuted and flogged in the synagogues or going before governors and kings. That only happens later in the book of Acts. So no, I don't think he's talking about, hey, I'll be there by the end of the week. So okay, does this refer then to his ascension? Because we're saying that it's in the book of Acts. The Son of Man coming, right? We looked at Daniel chapter 7, and it says when the Son of Man comes, that he's coming before the Ancient of Days. So maybe here he doesn't mean that the Son of Man is coming to them, but the Son of Man is going, to the Ancient of Days, God the Father. Perhaps this is talking about his ascension. Some people take that interpretation. But I would say no, because his ascension happens in Acts chapter 1. And only then does the Jewish persecution really begin, right? In chapter 2, when they call them all a bunch of drunkards, they malign them, they scoff at them. And then when they appear before the Jewish authorities by chapter 4, and then it really proceeds, that then the persecution really starts to kick in. So his ascension, if indeed this is talking about his ascension, it's supposed to put an end to and a relief to the persecution, right? He says, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel as you are escaping one to the next before the Son of Man comes. So instead, no, it's persecution, and then there is this sort of coming. Not this sort of coming and then persecution after. So I would say, no, it's not the ascension in Acts chapter 1. Y'all tracking with me? So is he referring to his second coming then? Well, I believe no. The apostles are all dead now, right, for over 2,000 years. So here he says that he will come, no, he says he'll come quickly before they even make it through the towns of Israel. So what is it referring to then? I believe it's referring to his coming to judge Israel in 70 AD. Again, I think he's just using the language that he has used all throughout the Old Testament of the coming judgment of the Lord. Whenever he also is going to judge his people, he always makes sure to let his people know that they are going to be judged, right? Before the northern tribe of Israel, the kingdom of Israel is taken by Assyria, like he lets them know that this is going to happen. He also lets them know why it's going to happen. He lets them know that this is the judgment that will take place. He wants them to know that this is not just some pagan nation destroying you. No, this is me using a pagan nation to judge you. Now, when he wants to judge a pagan nation, he will take his people and he will judge the pagan nation. He does this in the Promised Land, right? Whether it's Jericho or others. He uses his people to bring judgment on wicked nations. But what happens when his people are the wicked nation? What happens when his people are those who are wicked and actually are rejecting Christ and persecuting his people, the church? Well, then he needs to bring judgment upon them. And that's exactly what he does. And when he brings judgment on his own people, remember when he does Assyria to the northern tribe or even Babylon to the southern kingdom of Judah, he lets them know what he's going to do, that this will be a coming of judgment. And so I believe that that's what he's saying here, that he's going to come and he's going to judge his people Israel, and it's going to be a judge on them for the last time. And I do believe that that's 70 AD. Now, okay, so we're going to talk a lot about this in Matthew 23 and 24. So this is really just like getting you ready, getting you like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. What's going on there? What could that be? Is that his first coming? Is it his second coming? Okay, so 70 AD is a third coming? No, it's the last coming of the Old Testament. It's not one to be included in the advent of the new. So it's a coming likened unto his former comings of judgment in the Old Testament. Or maybe not. Maybe am I way off here? Okay, so we'll find out, right, as we continue to study Matthew and see which interpretation seems to be more likely. But again, how about for this week? Jesus tells them of a great persecution that's coming. He warns them of great tribulation that they will have to endure. They cannot go around it. They cannot go under it. They cannot go over it. They must go through it and remain faithful to the end. But their persecution and ours is not for the purpose of persecution only. Right? God is not sending us out as sheep among wolves in order to feed the wolves. No. He wants us to be cunning, wise, strategic, to outthink the enemy with good and righteous intentions for his name's sake. I'm actually thrilled, even after the sermon last week, to hear how so many of you are getting opportunities to speak up to the unrighteousness and things that you see within your own jobs. A lot of you are. A lot of you see some evil and wicked things going on, and you're just feeling God say, you need to speak up here. You need to do something about that. I'm calling you. You need to be the one. Some of you are sitting on boards so that you can speak up, so that you can cast a vote. Some of you, I've heard, are thinking about getting lawyers because your freedom of speech and religion is being attacked. Be wise as serpents, but innocent as doves. For righteousness' sake, for Jesus' sake. Do not be anxious when it comes time to write that email, or to have that conversation, or to write that article. Because I believe that when you speak to those who are hostile to truth in our day, your Father will give you the words to say, and His Spirit will speak through you. Only, yes, be wise, be strategic, be cunning, be righteous. Find a way even to keep your job. And let the darkness flee. Perhaps the greatest of all cunning example would be the one that Jesus gave to us. They thought that they defeated Jesus when they killed him. They thought that they would destroy this Son of Man when they crucified him, not realizing that by his death he would defeat all enemies, including death itself, and be raised to life above all earthly and heavenly powers, and even make a way for us to join him. So too, the blood of the martyrs, have you heard this? The blood of the martyrs, the old Latin phrase, is the seed of the church. All those early church fathers and martyrs, those who throughout church history, when darkness thinks it's won by killing the leaders of the church, all they end up doing is causing the church to grow time and time again. So then, Veritas Church, really the only way to fail our mission is to remain silent or to shrink back as cowards. For if we faithfully live for Jesus in our day, despite all persecution, and carry out his plan for our church, then come victory or come death, we cannot lose. Let us pray.